works. All right, let's get back to the free course. A quick disclaimer, because as you're watching through this course, you'll think, oh shit, this will make me a millionaire by next month. But unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And I want to set your expectations right from the start. And to do that, you need to know about the woman in the red dress. You've probably seen it. It's in the movie The Matrix. And when Neo looks back at the woman in the red dress, he gets distracted. And he looks again, and it's actually not a woman, it's an agent that's trying to harm him. The woman in the red dress is something that Alex Hormozi is talking a bunch about. But it basically means that you're getting distracted from what actually matters and from what actually grows your business. When I started my business a little over 3 years ago, something I was thinking a lot about is like what happens when you actually fail a business. And what I imagined when I thought about failing in business, I thought about like a closed shop with barricades from the doors, barricades in front of the windows, like very extreme. That this is what a failed business looks like. But in reality, it's usually not like that. When you hear the statistic that 9 out of 10 businesses fail, it's not like this at all. What happens most of the time is that some person builds one business. And it might be going decent, like they might be trending upwards like this, that they are slowly growing the business, right? But all of a sudden, they see this woman in the red dress that distracts them from their one business. So they start a second business. And maybe this business also goes decent when they just start out, also on an upwards trend. But what happens is that this other business starts to stall while this other one is growing. And at one point, both businesses are going to stall. And they're going to be stuck. I know that it sounds very cool when you tell people, oh, I run multiple businesses. But to an entrepreneur, that basically means, okay, this is a person right here that doesn't know how to focus on one thing, which means he'll be stuck and never actually reach his potential. Your focus can really only be in one place. And this is a mistake that I've made more than 2 times. So I'm by no means a saint right here. Instead, what you need to do is that you need to focus on one business, because growing a business is usually exponential. It goes like this. But if you stop and start a new business every time you reach this spot, you're missing out on an extreme amount of gains in your business. And a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck in this loop of focusing on the new woman in the red dress, the next distraction, and they just keep this circle going of only getting to here, and then starting a new business, and then only getting to here, and then starting a new business, and only getting to here. And the reason they start a new business is that they see this next thing, and they think, okay, this is a bigger opportunity. But the reality of all businesses, there's pros and cons of everything. Your business stagnates when you reach that point that you don't know how to solve. So instead of trying something else, when you run into problems, you need to keep going with one thing in order to unlock these gains. And that is if you even reach a point where you're growing. A lot of beginners, when they try a new business, don't even grow it at all. So they just try a bit, and then they stop, try a bit, then they stop, try a bit, then they stop on their first, second, and third business, when they don't realize that they need to keep going for long before they reach that exponential curve. So when you hear Alex Hormozi talk about the woman in the red dress, the next distraction, the next business model that seems easier but in reality isn't, this is what it means. So I'm setting your expectations from the start. This is not something where you become a millionaire overnight. And anyone that tells you that is probably doing it with the wrong intentions. It's something where you keep going for an extended amount of time before you make a single penny. It took me 4 months. And I would consider myself fairly smart. It took me 4 months of working 10 hours every single day in order to make my first money. And that was $400. So when I hear someone that says, oh, well, I tried this, I tried for 2 weeks, I just know instantly, okay, they're at this point right here. They're maybe 1/8 of the work they need to put in order to make their first $400. That's how I think about it. But if you stay consistent, if you keep going and you reach this point, then you never go back. And it's so worth it when you reach that point. Another thing you need to know about is that all businesses have features and not bugs. What do I mean with this? There are pros and cons at creating an AI business. Of course, one of the main pros is that AI does a lot of the work and that it becomes very scalable. And because you're using technology, you have high margins. But then there are also some cons, like that your client won't really understand it. They don't sit on AI YouTube like us all day. You'll also run into compliance things, especially if you are like in the EU. You need to make sure that you are compliant with the solutions that you create. And of course, it takes some time to learn. What a lot of beginners do is that they realize this, and this is the only thing they see when they start the business. They think, great, I'm going to start an AI business because I can do everything with Claude, and then I can have a business that runs itself. But then they run into issues like this. They might run into compliance issues and think, okay, well, I cannot do this because I don't know how to make it compliant. The reality is that this is a feature, not a bug. And the good thing is, and the way that I think about it, is that every time I solve an issue, I think about, okay, this is something that my competitors have to solve as well. So if I can solve this, then I'll be ahead of my competitors. So what a lot of beginners do is that they focus on the positive. They go into a business only knowing about this. And then later, they find all of the hard things in the business. And when they do that, they give up. For example, one of the main things that people don't realize about an AI business is that you need to have sales skills as well. A bunch of technical beginners come into the space, they can build something, but they don't know how to sell it. And then they give up instead of actually learning how to sell. And this phenomenon is what happens in all businesses. When we talk about the woman in the red dress, this right here is what we think about. When you hear about a new business, you only think about the positives. Like when you hear about trading, you think about, okay, great, I can put money in and I get more money out. And you think, okay, great, I don't have any employees, I don't have a boss. I only manage myself, I just sit alone and I print. But then you realize how hard trading actually is. And that's the thing that you don't realize before you try it. And the reality is that these things right here is what you need to solve in order to go from this flat exponential curve to it actually being exponential. But guess what? These problems will keep arising. Because, okay, you solve these things and you're starting to get some clients and maybe you're here. All of a sudden you need to hire people and it will be very hard to find someone that's as good as you technical. So then you have a hiring issue that you need to solve as well. So this list just keeps stacking, but as you solve them, that's when your business grows. You don't have to remember all of this. You just have to understand that every new business you see when you scroll Instagram and you watch YouTube tells you about this. But the actual thing you need to focus on is how do I solve these things and make sure that they don't come as a surprise. Because if you ignore these completely, you're just going to be trying a bunch of different business models and never succeed with any because you don't actually work through the hard things that it takes in order to grow that business.